There's a difference between making a successful film and controlling a vision. Because success can be collaborative, even accidental. But vision requires authority. It requires decision making power. It requires the ability to say no, to insist, to hold the line, even when it's inconvenient. And that's where most industries reveal themselves. Not in what gets made, but in who gets to decide how it's made. Because filmmaking is not just creative, it's political. Budgets, timelines, casting, final cuts, every choice is negotiated. And not everyone has the power to win those negotiations. So when a film feels cohesive, when it feels intentional from beginning to end, you are not just watching creativity, you are watching control. Today, we're talking about that control through the career of Kemi Adetiba. I am Adeoluwa, and this is Losing the Plot. Hey guys, welcome back, welcome back to our first sequel episode. Really, if you listen to last week's episode, you know that I had a lot of thoughts about the movie that we're discussing, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to end the conversation there because I think the episode was about an hour long or something. So I was like, okay, I'll just end the conversation right here, and then next week I'll do a part two, and this is the part two of the episode from last week. So yeah, I'm really glad that I'm really glad to be back. I'm also feeling much better, as you can hear in my voice. I'm not as sick as I was before. Last week I was sick, or the week before that. Anyways, I do feel better, so I'm ready to yap away today. In that last episode, we talked about King of Boys as a shift, right? We talked about a change in visual ambition, a change in narrative scale. But today, we're continuing some of the thoughts I had that I didn't get to say last week. But I wanted to ground those thoughts through asking a different question. What does it take to make something like that, right? I think throughout this season so far, when we talk about things of scale that have changed the industry and have changed how people create in certain industries and certain spaces, we also want to talk about what it takes to make something so iconic, so legendary. Because to make something like King of Boys, it's not something that just happens, right? It's something that you have to navigate, that you have to figure out through different brushes with the industry, two different brushes with your own skill and all of that nature. So I want to unpack that mostly today, but today is also going to be very losing the plot episode because, like I said, the reason why I'm doing this part two is because I have a lot of thoughts I didn't get to say in the part one that I want to say here. So there'll be a lot of random things that I just want to tidbits I want to talk about, but I'll try my best to ground them in the conversation of what it takes to make something like that. So if you're new here, welcome to Losing the Plot. If you are a return listener, welcome back to Losing the Plot, where we talk about system scales in popular culture and media. A lot of the episodes that we have done so far this season have been music related, and I've been saying I want something that's not music, I want something that's not music, and then finally here we are, something that's not music. So a round of applause for me for keeping my keeping my word. But yeah, so I think to start this conversation, I want to take it back a little bit further back than we started in the last episode. So I want to talk about Kemi Adetiba herself. I think people's proximity to taking bold stances and taking creative risks always stem from their own personal history. You are emboldened to jump between two cliffs if you have jumped between two stones before, right? So something predates that. Something gives you that launching pad, that idea to say, you know what, this crazy idea I want to do, I can do it. And with Kemi, I'm not going to go back to like all her childhood or anything that you can Google, but I think a tidbit that I found interesting about her while I was doing research for this is that before she was a filmmaker, she was already visible. So a lot of, if she reminds me of Jordan Peele in Hollywood, Jordan Peele and Ava DuVernay, right? So Ava DuVernay and Jordan Peele more closely. Jordan Peele already had a career as an accomplished actor and a comedian in Hollywood before he pivoted to directing and making films that were so serious and so topical and thought-provoking. So it feels to the audience and it feels to people that have known him before, having this career that this is so out of left field. Like, how are you able to create something like this? We're not used to seeing you in this light. And Kemi has a similar story. She worked in radio, she's worked in television, she was a media personality, and I think that is important because those media multi channels that she's worked in before helped her understand the audience. So there's something about transferable skills I find to be very interesting and important, especially with creatives. Same with Jordan Peele, is that there's something about in the case of Jordan Peele, right? If you comedy and drama are so adjacent to each other. I think more adjacent to each other than people would realize, because the kind of thing that it takes to make someone laugh, to get a laugh out of someone, is also is hitting on the same nerve that it takes to make somebody cry and feel emotionally involved in something. It's stakes. It's right. What makes physical comedy have such high stakes is that you are seeing the tension and the friction and the confusion on the character and whatever. And the same thing with drama is that the stakes, you feel that, and obviously they are emboldened by different elements. But even things like sound effects and the score and obviously the writing, they play a crucial role in what can make you laugh and what will make you cry, for lack of a better comparison. So all that to say that while Jordan Peele's shift from comedy to drama and psychological thriller of all things seemed very out of left field, he was able to take transferable skills as someone that worked in comedy and worked in those spaces and bring it to that, because he understood the thing that makes people tick in terms of laughing and in terms of drama. And I would say the same thing with Kemi, is that her work in radio and television, and even her being a media personality, helped her understand obviously what people are be discussing in everyday talk and water cooler conversations. But also it helped her understand the importance of energy and presentation, because from working in radio and television and media personality and working as a media personality, she would move into making music videos. And this is important because you can always kind of tell when the director of a movie is adjacent to working in music videos. They're just so some of the sequences in those movies, they can be so dizzying. I'm thinking of John Chu. I'm thinking of who directed The Greatest Showman. But those kind of movies, like with John Chu especially, there's just a scale of we don't have all the time in the world. So Michael Gracie directed The Greatest Showman. We don't have all the time in the world. We have this to tell this story, and nobody understands the concept of time limits and impressive story elements like a music video director, because you have 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Sometimes people can do a short length film for a song, that's okay, but you want to tell the best story and the most memorable story you can tell in that amount of time with whatever whims and elements you have. Right, so music videos are one of the few spaces where directors can fully control visuals, because they are using lighting, styling, pacing, mood to tell the story quickly, and that really translates into why King of Boys looks the way it looks. I thought about the color lighting from in the earlier episode about how, you know, her being able to bring something like that it doesn't feel like, it's not a natural, it's not like you don't go to dens in Nigeria and see red light or something, but it served the story. And that kind of visual language, I think, comes from that space of her working in working with music videos first. And I think a better example, not a better example, but an early tale of this music video knowledge that she has and how she brings it into her work is definitely with The Wedding Party. There's a pacing that The Wedding Party has. I remember watching that for the first time. I remember thinking about the pacing of the movie, where she, which is very unlike King of Boys, but there's a lot of fluff. I presume that is cut from The Wedding Party. So she's always like, the way The Wedding Party is written and the way it's directed, we're always aiming for the joke head first. So whatever space we are in, I'm thinking about I'm thinking about there's a scene in the wedding party where Shola Shobowale's character where they bring in like the bride is supposed to be at the wedding venue, and the the car that is supposed to carry the bride pulls up, and then Shola Shobowale's character asks the person, she's surrounded by her friends, she asks the person in the car, she says, where's my daughter? And like, oh, we don't know where she is. Like, we don't know where the bride is. Then Shola Shobowale's character starts listing off the most, like, with just that little information, she starts listing off the craziest thing that could have happened to her. Or did she get kidnapped? Or did she get this? And the way that scene is shot, right? So we are seeing her character from the car, and then seeing her character from the car first, and then going back to the part, and it plays like a, if you grew up or if you watch sitcoms, right, it plays for laughs, because the way that the camera goes back and forth, it's like Shola's performance, the reaction of her friends, where they go, ah, that would be the cue for where the laugh track would be, right? It's like performance, laugh. Even in the I think the climax of the movie, where they're all in that, there's a room that they're all in, and the gunman is moving the gun around and threatening them and whatever. Even the way that is shot, the way the camera moves to them and moves back, again playing for laughs to get their reaction, so the audience is prompted to laughing. I think of that pacing in terms of that music video history, because that in someone else's hands, they could have used, like, I don't know, a wider shot, and just so the story in a more straightforward way, we would still get the laughs, but not at the same speed at which we got the laughs, because we're going back and forth between the subject and the reaction. Because the reaction from the other characters lets us know that, oh, this is funny, we can laugh at this. This is for laughs, right? Again, and also in addendum to that point as well, is that when you, as a music video director, usually, if you're not dealing with big wigs, you have a lot of creative control. Making a film and making a music video are two different processes completely. But just from the very basics, the first scale of it is that usually when an artist wants to make a music video, they have a director in mind because of that director's style, and they kind of take sometimes they will go with the treatment of so a treatment is basically the artist's vision for the music video, if they have one. And treatments can be depend on the artist. I know that Taylor Swift has very specific treatments where she almost storyboards the entire video frame for frame, reference for reference. And there are other artists who just like, I want to be flying in the sky with diamonds or something, and then they give the treatments to the director. Now, because of the way that conversation is even beginning in general, you are just saying like, hey, I want your hand, I want your work in what I'm doing. Here's my idea I have, go for gold. And then the director goes for gold. So directors have a very powerful, in the music video sense, in more powerful than they are with a film. So with a film, you are working with producers, you are working with sometimes a studio, even the casting process for films, like there will be like the director's casting, then there will be the producer's casting, and if there's a network, there'll be network casting, and trained actors, actors that are trained to work in film and TV, they know the difference. They know the different performance they have to show in each of that casting process. So when you're working on a film, you just have more hands on the pot than you do when you're working on like a music video. I think one of my favorite casting stories is Amber Riley when she was auditioning for Glee. So again, because of how collaborative and how many people, just with a film or a TV show, I feel like on a network level, there are just so many more people involved. You're thinking about advertisers, you're thinking about the spots of the show in the lineup, you're thinking about the runtime, you're thinking about the cost, the production cost, how much they work. So there's just so many more hands in the stew. And because of that, for example, doing the director casting, I think is usually the second one. So you might start with casting, which is the casting director. So the casting director, sometimes they will, I think it's so interesting whenever I've watched a lot of documentaries and behind the scenes things about filmmaking, and sometimes it seems to me that the people casting directors almost never use the people that show up for casting, especially in this new dispensation of movie making and filmmaking. I don't know if that's always been the case, but they almost never use the submissions of people that come in person. But sometimes they do, obviously. But usually they will, depending on the scale of the project, they will find someone out. Especially if they feel like, okay, if they feel like they've seen a lot of people in person, and the people in person that they've seen are just not hitting the spot, then they will start like, they'll go on Instagram, they'll go on TikTok, they'll go wherever to see if they can find someone out. Anyway, so Amber Riley is auditioning for Glee. She's made it to the casting director round, which is, I think, I would say the hardest round. Then she's made it to the directors round as well. So Ryan Murphy was the one who directed Glee or created the show creators round. And then she had to do and again, in between all these audition processes, sometimes they'll have you do screen tests with people and all of that. So she had gotten to the network audition. So she had the casting director loved her, the director and the producer or the showrunner, they loved her, and now she was in she admitted to the network audition. And when before she was about to go in for the network audition, Ryan Murphy told her, when you go in there, don't be subtle. Like, when you go in there, sing the loudest, dramatize the loudest. And the reason for that is because the director and the casting director, they have a more grounded idea of what the project is. So if I were making a TV show or a movie about, I don't know, a high school choir, right? They know that the characters have to be dynamic. They know how these things will read over time. They know that the character, whoever is playing the character has to show that they have potential for somewhere to go for the character. They're also looking for someone that can add a layer to the character that they don't already have, so that if for whatever reason mid-season the character is a huge hit and they want to add like an additional storyline or a plot layer, this person can handle it. Like sometimes when the character goes from being funny to having like a dramatic moment mid-season, things like that nature. So they are thinking far ahead. But with the network wants to see a stereotype essentially. Then the network, they call them suits, like people in suits. So they're thinking, okay, you're supposed to be the black funny character, be black and funny. They're not really looking for range or dynamism. They're looking for, this person is black and funny, they'll get our black demography, we can sell them Kool-Aid or whatever. That was a crazy example. So the network audition is much more like, play it straight, like they're not looking for dynamism, right? And so Ryan Murphy told her, like, when you go for the network audition, play it very straight, play it very direct. Like, we like you, we love you, and we know that you have range. And during the show, we'll add this sort of to the character, we'll build the character up. But to get the role from these people, play it straight. And she went in there, she played it straight, and she got the role. So that's an example of just how collaborative and long, the filmmaking, TV making process can be. But on a music video, you don't really have that. So on a music video set, if the director sees you and likes you, you're hired. It's way more straightforward than that. All this to say that this is how Kemi developed her filmmaking language. And it's important because if you're a director that is used to collaborating with people and you are not used to being the top wig and the to have the final cut of your movie, which is another huge thing that happens, where directors complain about not getting the final cuts. Like the network or the studio gets the final cut of the movie oftentimes. When you see something that says director's cut, that means that the network or the studio removed things from what the director wanted and as the final sale, but then director has their own cuts. Like they probably will show you on like the DVD or the whatever, right? So if you're a director that is used to working with that, on that level of collaboration, there are just some things that you go into the process self-editing, right? Like you're already going to process, like, you know what, these people are going to say this movie is too long, let me cut it down now. People are going to say this character is not, I can't use a veteran Hollywood actor that she won't sell seats, let me find somebody new now. So that really affects your creative making process because you're already self-editing. But for someone like Kemi who is not used to really hearing no in terms of what she wants to do, because even with the wedding party, I believe Ebony Life gave her full creative control to do whatever they wanted to do with the first wedding party, which end up working for their benefit. But it's not a launching board that a lot of directors have experience with, right? So Kemi comes into this project like, I call my own shots. I do what I want, and granted, this is where things get, I think, impressive and interesting for me. There's a lot of is the word backlash, a lot of hardship that comes with you doing you being so stubborn and strong-willed about your vision, because people are like, you know what, you just got here, you only did a rom-com, now you want to do a political drama. Why is it almost 4 hours long? You want Shola Shobowale to be your lead, like a woman leading a gangster movie? Like, what are you talking about? Like, be so for real. And what is this budget? What is this budget, girl? What is this? Like, how you want how much? You want how much to do with? Like, there's so many obstacles that you have. Believe it or not, which I find it to be very interesting. I think I mentioned this in the last episode, that the final vision of King of Boys that we see is trimmed down from what she had. Like, she still had more than we saw. Like, there was a viewing party before the final release where it was a bit longer than the final version, right? So just to, I guess, beat the dead horse, that Kemi comes from a background of autonomy, and that really influences how she goes about making this film. So let's go back to the wedding party a little bit. Now I've talked about the importance of how learning how to work, her background as working as working as someone who has autonomy in the work that she makes, right? Because the wedding party was such a huge success, like, and it was like you had to be there. You know, some of these things, like, I'm just like, there's really, if this was a documentary, we could show you clips of the craze that was the wedding party. Like, you really just had to be there. It was such one of those like crystallized moments between Shola Shobowale's reemergence into the public zeitgeist, coupled with Banky and Adesowa just being cultural behemoths at the time. They really took over the cultural conversation as a couple and as individuals. To Ebony Life's I don't think people think of Ebony Life as much now in terms of filmmaking, like, just like film, like being ahead of the curve of filmmaking. But that was a time when, like, nobody was making movies and films, TV shows like Ebony Life was. It was just very ambitious, very Hollywood adjacent, right? So the wedding party was commercially successful and massively visible. I know that I went to look back at some of the reviews of the wedding party, and some of the reviews were mixed, but that's fine, because a rom-com getting mixed reviews is a tale as old as time, because a rom-com is trying to achieve something very specific. There are very specific beats that a rom-com needs to accomplish for it to be successful to the audience. So the critical reception being mixed is okay. A rom-com has to be literally romantic and has to be funny. Romantic comedy. It has to have romance and it has to be funny. Those are the beats a rom-com needs to hit. So everything in terms of story, there's a lot of I know I talked last week, the last episode, about the scene where Adesuwa is she's by the sea, by the ocean or whatever, and there's like is it a burning tree? But there's something like giving her light and she's in a wedding dress, and I remember watching and being like, this is so Hollywood in the most bizarre way. But that's a romantic comedy. That's why it's a romantic comedy. It's supposed to be grand and larger than life. So right. So anyways, with making a movie as successful as The Wedding Party, it actually gave her a new problem where you have made something so successful, so commercially viable, and your next project for most people will just be, if not a similar project, something that lives in that same ethos, right? Because it's obvious that she understands the language, she kind of understands what the audience wants when they are seeing things like this. But Kemi did not do that. Because most directors, after a hit like The Wedding Party, with the cast of The Wedding Party as well, like, again, we're now in 2026, but if you go back to the time when Wedding Party came out, it was Shola Shobowale had not been working for a while. Like she was just not in the zeitgeist for she had not been in the I think she had moved to London to the UK for a while. So the movie was just like it really gave her career a new lease. And then Adesua was up. I don't even know if to call her upcoming at that point because she was really at the front of a lot of conversation in Nigerian popular media. I remember this because I was working in Nigerian entertainment as a journalist at that time, which is so it's like 10 decades ago. But I remember I was working, I was a journalist, entertainment journalist at the time. And I remember I remember there was a day I was thinking, oh my God, like everything we post is about Adesuwa. I told me, like, that's how big she was. So even that cultural moment of being able to bring back a veteran and kind of reintroduce them to the public in tandem with working with a new rising star was just it just worked chemically. But and after something that is so specific like that, most directors just want to repeat the formula: safer, bigger, more of the same. And then over time, like then they can now pivot into something else. Like they can now pivot into. I think of. I don't know if this is a good example, but I think of kind of like Ryan Coogler making a bunch of biopics and I don't know, not biopics, but content that already has existing IP, right? So, Creed was an existing IP. Black Panther was also an existing IP. I think was Food Station existing IP. I don't think Food Station was original from him. So he kind of like he finds a formula and kind of similar to Kemi as well. Ryan Coogler, and everybody knows that Ryan Coogler has a working relationship with Michael B. Jordan, and they all of Coogler's work all of Kula World features Michael. So he finds a formula that works. So Food Station was a biographical film drama, um, an autobiopic of some sort, right? So Kugler finds a winning combination with Michael and the kind of stories he's going to tell, existing IP or biopics mixed with this just a star. Michael B. Jordan is just a star, you know. And then he keeps making those kinds of movies until he gets to a point where he's now like Black Panther does crazy numbers. Creed is a cultural phenomenon, and now he has proved his worth to a point where he can now say, okay, LOLJK, what I really want to make, what I really would like to make is this original cultural historical fantasy vampire movie. And you can see him like, you know, kind of paying his dues with those earlier films just so he can make what I would for sake of conversation what he wants to really make. But Kemi doesn't do that, right? So Kemi making King of Boys after Wedding Party would be like Ryan Coogler making Sinners after Fruitvale Station or Sinners after Black Panther, like the first Black Panther, right? That's and if you think about it in that way, it's even more impressive because what do you mean you made Fruitvale Station and now you want to make Sinners? Like who is what is very brazen, but that's exactly what she does. She doesn't pay her due. Or when I say pay her dues, what I mean is that she doesn't wait to make other things that are easy sells for her or easy makes for her or things that are more palatable. She says, okay, I've done the cute one. I have an idea and I want to bring it to life. She pivots completely immediately. So in that way, King of Boys is not a safe follow-up to Wedding Party, which Wedding Party is our first feature film. Like it's an impressive story all around. Wedding Party being our first feature film with a different tone, and now pivoting directly to King of Boys. So King of Boys is not a safe follow-up. It's darker, it's longer, it's more complex, it's less commercially predictable because again, for you to appreciate this conversation and all of this, you really have to be in 2016, 2017 and put your mind at that. This is Nigerian film industry. We do some dramas, you know, there are definitely dramas, but definitely not psychological thrillers. The runtime again is the most impressive thing to me. I know obviously like again maybe like there are scenes that I think could be shorter whatever, but the fact that she stuck to that runtime and the runtime tells the expanse of the story is so it's so incredulous, right? And all of these choices matter because they signal something that it's not just about success for her. It's also about authorship. It's about proving that the first success wasn't luck. The first movie was successful because of her whims and her know-how as a director and as a storyteller, and she relied strongly on those same instincts to do this, right? So that I feel like that contextualizes a lot of the rest of it. Now let's talk about the control in question, right? Because control is expensive, and it's the part that we don't talk about. Control costs, right? There's time, money, energy, reputation that is on the line because we are insisting on a vision, and that's for her would look like longer shoot time, more detailed production. But just like looking back at just the costume design of that first movie, everything is so intentional. The people that are featured in it, the scale of it, there are shooting scenes, there are drama scenes, there are montages. There's just I don't I wonder what the how many locations they use for something like that. It's just, again, now we see them in Nollywood productions more frequently and more often, but that wasn't always the case, right? More detailed production, higher expectations, and an industry like Nollywood, which has historically prioritized speed, that's friction. We talked last week about the home video pipeline with Nollywood, and how they were like just had to get things out, and it's like, no, this is not a project that we're just getting out. The project that we're going to take our time, workshop, really pull in and out, and then we will move on. So when you see a film like King of Boys, you're not just seeing ambition, you're seeing resistance, because all of those things come at a cost. Okay, now one of the things I wanted to get into last week that I did not get, I don't feel like I said my piece enough. I know one thing about me, I really would like to beat that horse dead. Yeah. I like to beat a dead horse. So I want to talk about Eniola Salami as a character. One of my favorite characters in like all of cinema. Definitely. I don't know what number she will be on, but she's definitely one of my favorite characters in all of cinema. And my favorite thing about one of my favorite things about the Eniola Salami character is that she's so problematic. In creating of that character, I think as an actor, I think Shola and Shola Shobale would definitely appreciate that. Is that the character is so dynamic. You can feel bad for her and still be like, "Madam, you're an evil person." And on the grander scale of what that character means is that Eniola is not the exception; she's the problem. And I think that's an important phrasing because she's a woman. So in most of all of the scenes that she is dealing with the overlords and the powerful people, it's usually just her and her daughter. They're the only two women in those rooms. And I think because of her gender, which is it's a through line throughout this movie and the series, is that it creates a tension for her because she's not it's not shocking because she's corrupt. The system is already corrupt. The system that we come into in the movie and in the TV show is already working in a corrupt system. It's shocking because she's a woman who is not asking for permission inside that system. So she's not being nice about it. She's not being polite. She's not asking for permission. She's not a character that is negotiating how people would think of her. How all of those things we do see in different points that those things matter to her. Those things that people say, she's a Yoruba woman at the end of the day, like what people say matters to you. However, as much as they matter to her in the crevices of darkness and at her low points. But when she's going for something, she's just going for it. And the film makes that something uncomfortable very clear. The system in the world of the film and in the world of the series does not reject corruption, it rejects uncontrolled power. And that's the tension, which I love this movie so much. Because there's just so many, like, when it comes to themes when it comes to how many themes we are landing in this one film, there's so many themes that you can just like make 10 essays about, right? Because there's the gender thing, there's just the regular political corruption, there's the violence. The violence is a different layer of there's elitism in there's as a theme. Religion is also a theme in this. The play between her being a Christian and Reminiscence's character being a traditional worshipper. There's so many her being a mother is a theme. The friction that this has with her children, her younger days, like Kemi has enough time in this story to give us a backstory about how she becomes this way. Shout out to Tony Tones. I mean, wow, what a performance. I just realized that I didn't even make a note about it. That's sacrilegious. One of the most surprising, I think this is surprising to me, elements of King of Boys is the usage of what do they call it? Flashback. Because again, flashback can only with 5 and 6. Like only with any small conflict that they want to resolve, they'll give us the flashback. OTAB. So do not take you back. So flashback is very overused, in my opinion, as a plot device in Hollywood movies, except in this one because it's done so well. Like Like the genesis of how she finds herself in a position, how she get her relationship with her daughter Kemi, like it's just done so well. And then Tony Tones gives, for the amount of screen time that she has in the movie, such a breathtaking performance. Again, I feel like one of the things that made this movie such a cultural masterpiece as well, because it was such a lot of surprising performances in the movie, apart from the movie itself being surprising. Because before then, Tony Tones she was a rom-com girly, she played very cute, Lagos babe roles. So giving an opportunity to show that much range and for her to deliver on such a level of, it was just so. And then tying back again to the cinematography, there's a scene where the older Eniola Salami and the younger Eniola Salami are in conversation. One of the, oh my god, like it's just so good. Like those scenes. There's another scene in the TV series. I'm really trying my best to talk about the movie and not the TV series, because I love the TV series as well. But there's another scene in the TV series where I believe it's the first episode, is the pilot of this TV series, where she goes to the grave of her children. And she does this eulogy over her children, and she's like sad and she's crying and she's defeated. And then Tony Tones comes out and starts cursing her out. I love it so much because in the TV series, I think the A plot of the TV series is that Eniola she's trying to convince herself that she's a good person that went through difficult times, but she's not evil. And Tony Tone's character represents herself, telling her that no, you are an evil person and you do evil things. And then they go through this tension throughout the entire. Oh, it's done so well, you guys. They go to she goes through this tension back and forth throughout all the episodes where it's like, I'm not evil. I was like, you are evil. I'm not evil. You are evil. And then finally, in the scene where who does she kill? She kills somebody. This is great. Let me talk it. Let me. This is really great. So finally, the entire season she's struggling between whether she's good or she's evil. Then she gets to the season finale, I believe, and she kills someone, right? But when she's killing the person, the hand that she uses to kill the person is the hand of her younger self, of the Tony Tones. So Tony Tones kills the person, but then we see that it's her that kills the person, and that's just so instructive. Like Kemi using that as a plot tells that the evil lies inside of Eniola and it's kind of who she is. ? Great storytelling. Anyway, losing the plot. Let's get back on track. Anywho, all of these. Actually, no, this is actually not losing the plot because I'm talking about Eniola's character. The dynamism of the character is what I was talking about. Yeah. So like, even just from my little rants of all the beats I've touched, that's in one person. That's in one character in a 3-hour movie. That's a lot of range to cover, as well as with the fact that Eniola is also funny. She's also funny when she needs to be funny. She's quick-witted when she. I think the quick wit is the majority of the character, where she's very fast, thinks on her feet. She's very emotional. She's very vindictive. She's very soft. All of these complexities in one lead female character driving a movie about gangs in Lagos is, because it's been done now and done again. It's like, oh yeah, like it makes sense. But before now, like on paper, it just looks like, how are you going to accomplish this? Like it's just so varied and so vast and so wide. And again, shout out to Kemi for a great script. Just a great script. The dialogue in the movie is phenomenal. And I think especially when you talk about Eniola Salami's characters in relation to power, um, power power is another theme in the movie. Power between people, power between the government and the people, power within oneself. There's so many themes in this movie, bro. It's so vast. But yeah, power is another theme in the movie. And I think my thesis of what Kemi is trying to say about power in this movie is that power the system that these people live in, it does not reject corruption, but it rejects uncontrolled power, because uncontrolled power is also a sign that the person that has the power is not in control of themselves. So the best dichotomy, or the best parallels I can give for this is like the corruption agent that ends up busting Eniola Salami's case, whatever. I think his wife died. Like, he was going through a rough patch, right? But we're able to see that even through the rough patch that he was going through, his values were so strong that he was still focused on doing the right thing. So in that way, he had power over his values and his character. So it wasn't going to be a thing of, because I've gone through this bad thing, I've collected the bribe, because I want to, like, this is a moral upstanding character that is going to remain morally upstanding, irregardless of whatever life throws at him, regardless of whatever plot points happen in the movie. And then we have Eniola, who is like, she's always a victim of not to say that she didn't go through some hard stuff, right? But just as a juxtaposition is that, like, this person does not have power over themselves and their values. Their values are up for debate. Eniola can be a good person and send someone's daughter to school or whatever, but at the same time, she wants something because of that. You can't say no to her because of that. She can be a troubled mother who can't get her two children to get along and whatever, and be sad about that. But at the same time, she always gives her daughter the upper hand in things. So she's dynamic in that way, but what it shows is that she doesn't really have control or power over herself. It shows that she is a character that is at the whims of the power that she gets. So the more powerful she becomes, the more out of control she becomes. Also, because there are also plot points throughout the movie and even in the TV series where her right hand man will be like, madam, I think we should pivot, or I think we should not do this. But again, she doesn't have power over herself. She's very singularly focused on whatever emotion she's feeling at the moment, that she's not able to get to the end sometimes. And she's also very strategic, because there's something that she pulls off that come from sitting down and watching. So it's dynamism. But the through line is that she hasn't mastered the Tony Tones character. Like, that version of herself that is a dog with teeth and is very vicious and wants control and wants everything now. The TV show especially, but the movie as well, shows that she has not been able to master that character and own that character, and that becomes inevitably because of her downfall and why she loses so many things. Okay, so that was my little tangent on the Eniola character. Let's go back to talking about Kemi. Okay, so Kemi versus the system. So let me be honest for a moment, because this is where the conversation can get uncomfortable. Kemi is, through making a movie like The King of Boys, she's not just making a film, she's pushing against a system. And that system has a very specific logic. If you're a Nigerian creative, And that logic is speed over precision, volume over detail, familiarity over risk. Nollywood historically has been built on efficiency, right? Quick turnarounds, lower budgets, high output. And that model has worked. It literally is why we have the industry that we have today. It has built the entire industries. But what it has also done, it's that it has created limitations, right? Because of all those structures and things that are put in place, especially for me, one-time woman film director, um it creates limitations because when speed becomes priority, detail can feel optional. And when detail becomes optional, the vision becomes negotiable in a very, very meta way. And I didn't think about this up until now. Um, King of Boys, in many ways, not many ways, in some ways, can be read as like the story of Kemi's entrance into the industry, being this very strong-willed woman that will not stop till she gets what she wants, which I, take with that a grain of salt. I don't think, I would leave the comparison to that, obviously. So when someone like Kemi enters this kind of system with a different approach, where she wants to do things slower, we saw how long it took for her to kill a monkey. Like, she takes her time. she reminds me of Frank Ocean, and Adele, where she will take her time, and then when she takes her time, what she comes out with is always wow. She's just more deliberate, more controlled, and that creates a tension because now you're asking the system to do something it was not designed to do in an era where people have the big Christmas movie or the big this. She doesn't chase those trends. She doesn't chase. Those are not the things that determine the quality of her work. She's not trying to hit the biggest box office sales or make the movie of the season. Like, she's just trying to make the best work that she knows how to make with the resources that she has. And when you do that, you create a tension because now you're asking the system to do what it's not supposed to do. You're forgetting the system, the audience. King of Boys requires something from the audience, the watcher, the viewer that nobody else at that point had required them to do. It said, yeah, you can be entertained, but like, I want you to think about what you're watching. I want you to follow these character arcs. I want you to follow these transitions. I want you to pay attention to this light. It's also demanding from the audience something that they have not been asked to do before. Slow down, spend more time, care more. And again, all of these things, it doesn't come cheaply. That's expensive, not just financially but also culturally, right? Because for me anyways, I can't speak for every single person ever in the world that has watched the movie, but for me, one of the reasons why the film stays with me is that most films entertain you and then some films impress you, but very few films rewire how you see something. Very few films, especially at that time, change how you perceive certain people to be in terms of range of emotion and complexity. And King of Boys does that. It takes all these characters that start out as archetypes and cliches, even Reminiscence's character, again, another surprise, very random, surprising performance. Reminiscence's character, and just gives them dynamism and layers in so many ways. Like, it's able to still draw the line of who is a hero and who is a villain while showing you why they became a hero and why they are villains in a way that broadens your knowledge based on the parameters of the film, on what these people can be and what they have been and what is possible for the story and all of that. So I think King of Boys is one of those films because after watching it, you don't just think about the characters, you start thinking about the world, the rooms you are not in, the decisions you don't see, the systems you participate in without realizing. It's the kind of film that kind of makes you sensitive to the world that you live in and how you are in the world. And because of that, because it's one of those rare examples where the visual language is compelling as well as the story narrative, it becomes a movie that is not just about style, because there's a version of events where the movie is all style and no substance. We have the camera angles, we have the costuming, we have the cinematography, everything looks amazing, everything feels grand and feels big, and there's budget spent on the extras and the locations, and Ayuba is performing in the first scene and all of those things. And then there's no story. Like, there's no real, the story has no real meat or bones. There's just budget and no real meat. But this is not a movie that is this is not a movie about aesthetics. This is where I think people misunderstand the conversation. Because a lot of people, when they think about King of Boys, I think fair enough, they think about the lighting, the costume, and the cinematography, but it's not. It's about standards. It's about what is possible when the story itself is solid, as well as the skill set of people making the story, the filmmakers, being solid as well. Because once audience sees what is possible, they start expecting it, and that expectation is pressure. I think that for the most part, Nollywood has lived up to that pressure. So again, why we're talking about this in the first place, that in the years following, we've seen movies of that same genre, that same range, that same scope come up, and I feel like for the most part, like we've seen a bunch of them do really well. But I one of the things, again, the through line of this film, I think, is that the most important line in the film is not spoken. There's something that the film never says out loud, right? But it shows you constantly, and it's about power. We don't have a, I strongly, I strongly dislike a movie. Okay, is that fair? Okay. I sometimes, not all the time, let me be honest. I sometimes strongly dislike when a movie says the core thesis of the movie directly, like in a line. Like you know how those old Nollywood movies, they'll get to a scene when either the pastor or the alpha will be like, and this is it. This is a message for all the mothers out there. Raise your children. Like, it's just, it gets preachy, and then it gets to the point where, like, it's like you're watching a church drama, like, and they have to tell you what the moral of the story. Like, the best films don't say they don't give you a monologue or a soliloquy where someone says, and this is why I did it. I don't. The reason why I put sometimes there is because I don't always hate it. Like, I don't always hate it. There are times when I think about, there's a musical called on once on this island, and they have a song where, no, the literal name of the song is "This is why we tell the story," or "Why we tell the story," and I love that song. Song is a bop. I think the way they tell you what the play is about works there. I think of as well Sinners, which I remember reading this from a bunch of critics, where, the scene in Sinners where the in the barn you start to see the different music griots of over the ages all appearing in the band. There's a hip hop guy, there's this and that. It's very heavy handed in saying this is what the movie is about. I don't mind that one as well. I think because it's done in a very style. I know that a lot of critics were like, that's really a very heavy handed way of, because we already before that sequence, that point was already made in the intro of the movie and throughout the boys' relationship with his guitar and the dialogue and all of that. So it was a very heavy-handed way of saying this is what the movie is about. But I don't mind it. It wasn't something I minded. I thought that it was done really well and was fun. So I don't always mind it, but most times I do. But in King of Boys, we don't have that at all. There's no most important line in the film that is spoken. It's not spoken. It's something that is not said, but it's reinforced to the audience throughout the movie. So power is not held. Power is negotiated. Every room is unstable. Power can change. Every alliance is temporary. Every decision has a cost. That's why the film feels so tense when nothing is happening, because there's always something happening that is reminding you that the reason why we are now at this scene is because of power and power dynamics. Because when you understand that everything can shift at any moment, it gives you more appreciation for the moment that you're in, and it makes you just sensitive about where things can go. It puts you on the lookout, right? So here's the real question: if King of Boys represents a higher standard, why doesn't every film that came after it look like that, right? Is it budget? Is it time? Is it willingness? And the answer is because not every filmmaker wants to fight the system. And also, to be fair, not every production can afford to. Not everybody has, like I said this before in the last episode, not everybody has the range to write a psychological thriller. It's like, we do need YouTube films, we need YouTube films. I think of Insecure, for example. Insecure is an amazing TV show by Issa Rae, but Insecure's runtime is 30 minutes. sometimes less than that. And they have like short seasons as well. They're like 7 episodes per season or something insane like that, right? So while we have seen an upsurge in political thrillers in Nollywood and all of those things, it's not we shouldn't expect it all the time, because we don't even need it all the time. Sometimes we have these important stories that tell us what we need to tell about a genre, and they're like the book closer of those topics and those genres. Um, and I think the part we don't talk about enough as well is that for someone like Kemi, when you raise the standard, you also isolate yourself, right? Because now you're no longer operating at the industry's average, you are operating above it. And I think that creates distance between you and other filmmakers, you and expectations, you and what is considered to be normal. And this is what makes Kemi's work so important to me. Not just that it looks different, but it forces the industry to decide whether it wants to change. Okay, let's see how we do for time. I oh my god, I have so much to say about this film. Let's lose the plot a little bit. I want to talk about I'll talk about power a little bit more. Because I was reading a bunch of reviews about the film, and one of the, again, this is like a running critical comments that critics will make about anything that has subject matter like this. Is not just peculiar to King of Boys, and it's like this film that you're making glamorizes this and it glamorizes that and it glamorizes violence and it glamorizes this. And my thoughts around that is that I don't think the film glamorizes power. I think it weaponizes it. So on the surface, right, King of Boys looks luxurious. And then from that first, that I think that was the job of that opening scene. The party was supposed to show us how popular, controversial, and how wealthy Eniola is, in juxtaposition with how ruthless she is as well, right? What is at stake for her? I think of that scene where she uses she's wearing like a wrapper in that first scene, and then she stabbed the guy with a knife or something, and she then uses the cloth she's wearing to clean her bloody hands after doing that. Like, it's just a perfect juxtaposition of like, this is a very powerful woman and she really does what she wants, and the dark side of her business and her socialite tendencies, they marry to make you know this, right? Also, that's also an important scene, because in that scene there's someone at the party that was criticizing her, saying about, oh, she bleaches, she's a agbero, she's a this, she's a that. So also letting us, the audience, know that people know what's going on, which is Nigerian tale of most things. Like, people generally have an idea of like, oh, where you're getting your money and where you're doing this. So that's why that first thing is very important in cementing those plot points for us. However, while it looks luxurious, money, status, influence, every time power is displayed, it is tied to something darker, right? Like an example is that first scene, like I mentioned, where we see that she's powerful. She knows this famous musician. I think the king comes to her party, and we see how powerful she is. But then we see later, just in the same building, in the same hall, that she's our boys have caught somebody and they want to kill the person, right? So we see that, like, why I don't think the film glamorizes power is because we see that, yes, you can be powerful, but do you want to be this powerful? Do you want the stakes that come with this power? I think that's something that Kemi is always trying to show throughout the entire film, is that these people, they get the money, they get the contract, they win this, they win that, but there's never any rest, really. It's always from frying pan to fire. It's always from microwave to oven. There's no semblance of rest, and there's a cost to it. Like, she loses her children, she loses her status. There's always violence, fear, loss. There's no clean power in this film. I think that's intentional, because it allows Kemi to drive home the point of, if you are saying that power is glamorous, that means you're not looking closely enough, and that's what the film is really saying about that. Okay. That was my power tangent. Back to Kemi, the director has a brand. So, following the King of Boys, and again, caveat to this is that, again, if I say something on this podcast that you don't think is factually correct, adeoluwamiskajimo.com, please send it to me. I will address it. I'm speaking based on research, but also based on a lot of of my own analysis of the research I've done. Part of my analysis is that Kemi gave rise to the director as a brand in Nollywood, right? There's another shift with King of Boys where most Nollywood films are sold on actors. So faces, familiar names. But with Kemi Adetiba, something different happens. The director becomes part of the brand. People show up not just for the cast, but because it's a KAV movie. They're showing up because this is a movie that Kemi Adetiba made, and I trust her quality, I trust her style. And that has become more prevalent in the years after. There are so many directors that we know now. So many, we even know producers now. There are producers that we know. And we, when we want to watch the movie, yes, we want to see the cast, but we also are doing that because of the person directing it, and that's a shift that I want to attribute to her. I think before then, I would only have thought of maybe Kunle Afolayan as being a kind of celebrity director, but before then, like I don't know that people were rushing to see a film because of the director. It was usually the cast that sold the film. And one of the cool things about the director being a brand is that it allows for us to meet new talent. Because if the director is bankable and we can sell the movie based on who directed it, then we can introduce new faces, new talents, and there's less of pressure of people not seeing it because they don't know who's in it, right? And then I think of, what's her name? Genova, is her name Genova? I want to confirm if her name is Genova. Genova. She was in I always call it Spider-Man Far From Home, but it's not Spider-Man Far From Home. Far From Genova Ume. I think of someone like Genova Ume, right? Every time I've seen her, for the first couple of movies I've seen her in, before Breath of Life. Did I say like something else? I think I've seen that before, because I think by the time I saw her in Breath of Life, I knew she was a great actress. But every time I'd seen her before then, I was always like just impressed by her acting, right? And that's because my point is, like, I didn't go into the movies that I saw her in. Blood Sisters. So she was in Blood Sisters, yes. So I didn't go to Blood Sisters because of her. I didn't know who she was. Right? But when I watched Blood Sisters, I was like, who is this? Who is this lady? Now, Blood Sisters, I don't think Blood Sisters was marketed solely on the director. I think the name Blood Sisters in Nigerian kini is already like a moving thing. And I think this babe was in it, Nancy. So like there were other people, but my point is, like, when you have space, when you free up space on whose personality can sell the movie, you can also do a switch and bait and introduce us to new actors and actresses in that way, because we're going to see it anyways, so might as well see new faces and see them wow us, right? And I think it's for the directors, it makes the casting process more fun, because, like, okay, I'm sending, like, I think I don't know if I can say Kunle Afolayan with Anikola Po. I don't know. I can't think of anybody new I met because of that. But anyways, that's my point. Moving on. I think that thankfully, luckily, thankfully, all the things, Kemi has not let me down yet. I can't say that for a lot of people. Some of y'all have really let me down. You know, you give me a banger, you give me two bangers sometimes. And then you start making choices. Then you start doing things, and I'm like, this is again, mind you, a bad film is hard to make. A bad film is a lot of work, a lot of money. So I respect the filmmaking process, which is why I'm even more wow when somebody is able to constantly just surprise me. I think to kill a monkey, my only two critiques was that, like, that first episode was, oh my god, it was such a grind. The first episode, I was like, can we I think I had a bit of problem with the pacing. in the first couple of episodes, but when the story started, we were in. Like, that's what I love about Kemi's productions. Like, once, like, she really does want to build a world, and world building takes patience, and filmmakers love to world build. So you can, so at the stakes, so you can feel the stakes, right? You can feel why this is important. But then once the stakes, once the world was built, like once we're in the story, in the groups of the story, or what they watch, yeah. And again, performances, I think she's also really good at casting, because the performances in To Kill a Monkey are just, they're so good. They're so good. Like, they're just so, everybody's meeting the moment. And what is even cooler to me is that, like, most shows or most things, like, you only expect the lead character or the protagonist to be the one that has the full character evolution, right? So you expect the lead character to be the one that evolves from A to Z throughout. But Kim is able to write multiple dynamic characters that have multiple character arcs and evolution. I'm thinking about in To Kill a Monkey, Stella Damasos' character, as well as a boss, and like multiple characters, multiple character arcs that don't conflict with each other, that help the story. It's like so good, so good. I want to talk about King of Boys: The Return of the King, which is a TV show, which I said multiple times I wasn't going to talk about, but I'm just going to talk about it in little elements. The expansion, right? So another reason why King of Boys to me is so bankable is because Kemi has now made it an IP, intellectual property. So we have the movie. Then we had the Netflix series, which I loved as well. I think did I have a problem with the pacing? I'm trying to remember if I had a problem with the pacing. I don't think so. I think there were just a lot of characters in the TV show, which is fair. By expanding the world, right? We're bringing in new stakes, so there were just a lot of characters. But yeah, I absolutely love the TV show as well. I think it's another show because now the story expands to a longer format, a global platform, higher expectations, but also for Kemi, which is I think important, more control, right? Because streaming, for all its whims, it allows for scale, it allows for depth, for time, and that aligns specifically with the kind of storytelling that she has been building all this while. So what does this mean for Nollywood? I think what this means for Nollywood is that the ceiling has been removed, not just visually but also structurally. It shows that directors can have identity, films can have authorship, audiences can respond to vision, not just familiarity, and that changes as a creator, as a storyteller, what is possible for you. Because okay, if I commit and I do my research and I work on a story, the audience will react. The audience likes good things, the audience likes good things, and they can smell authenticity from a mile away. You know what I'm saying? So it's a dynamic watch. I think with King of Boys, we are talking about the film not just being a story but being a system as well. It's not just telling you what power looks like, it's also showing you like how power works, and that's a very different thing, because most films oversimplify power, and they do that by making it about individuals, right? So good versus bad, hero versus villain. But like I said, with Eniola and other characters in Kemi's world, we see a dynamism of how many personas can exist in one human vessels. So it's not just as simple as good or bad or hero versus villain. It's about stakes. And she makes power a character without ever explicitly saying so. And King of Boys again removes the illusion of hero villain, good bad. It shows you networks, it shows you rooms, it shows you conversations that I feel like you're not supposed to hear. It shows you that she really puts academic work that frames the film as a metaphor for real political systems. I want you to see that. I'm thinking about the table. Throughout King of Boys, she continues to use tables, so they're always tables, and that's significant. That's a metaphor, right? The table, who's at the top of the table, you can always see with the camera angle who's at the top of the table, who's at the bottom of the table. And if you even going back to other political thrillers and psychological thrillers that she's pulling from, you see that the table is an important character in these kind of spaces. The table, the chair, the throne, all these things, they add to our understanding of what she's trying to say, and that starts becoming a blueprint, right? There's something the film understands that most people miss Nobody in King of Boys is fully in control. Not Eniola, not the politicians, not the men at the table, because power in this world is never stable. It moves around, it's negotiated constantly. Every alliance in the movie is temporary, every position is fragile, every victory has a cost, and that's the illusion of control. From the outside, power looks solid, decisive, right? But it is truly untouchable. And up close, you see that untouchable phenomenon that we call power is unstable, it's reactive, it's always at the risk of collapse, right? Because one thing can shift what it means for everybody. One person dies, 10 people have died. One policy change, this has changed, right? Even the most powerful person in the room is still responding to something. And I think that's what makes the movie feel so unsettling, because it forces you to confront something real. Control is not something that you have, it's something that you maintain. And that maintenance of control and power is the true thesis of the movie, which I don't feel like it glamorizes power. It shows you, like, do you want to have to always be watching your back? Do you always want to wonder what's at stake? And the moment you stop maintaining it, you lose it. So King of Boys isn't again about who has power, it's about how quickly power can disappear. So that's my real takeaway from that. This was fun. I think I'll do more. I won't do it all the time, but if I ever have done an episode, I feel like I've not said, like, now I feel satisfied. Like that, I was like, yo, I have more to say. You have to understand that since I watched this film, like, I think I wrote an article about it when I first watched it as well. But I've just, like, I think about it a lot. I think about the direction. I think about cinematography, and I just have so many thoughts. But I think I've said all my thoughts now. I'm satisfied. I'm happy. Because at the end of the day, this episode is not just about community, but it's about something bigger. It's about what happens when someone insists on doing things differently and succeeds. You know, as a creative myself, and I think when I was watching as a creative as well, it's something you always think about. It's like, I want something different, but what if? There's a lot of what ifs that can cloud that. And I think what I've learned from this, especially like preparing for this episode, is that you can't ask for permission for certain things. You just have to take it. And when you take permission for yourself, you also create permission for others, people, for the industry, for the future. Okie dokie. If this episode made you rethink what it takes to make a film like King of Boys, please share with someone who thinks great films just come together. Because now you know that great films don't just come together. They are built, and more importantly, they are protected. So thank you guys so much for watching. And if wherever you're listening or watching on, no, you can't be watching, guys. You'll be listening. Sorry. Wherever you're listening on, please be sure to subscribe, follow, like, comment. And again, I'm always saying, if you want to share a thought with me, or if you have an idea for an episode I could do that is not music related, I mean, I'll take music related recommendations as well. But episode ideas, please send it to adeoluwamusic@gmail.com. I will be very grateful for your engagement on that end. And y'all know that I would never leave you without saying, greatness isn't a moment, it's maintenance. As long as you are still practicing, you are still progressing, and progress never loses. Stay grounded, you guys. Goodbye.